Hi everyone, Rocker here. Today I want to talk about something that is very important and it's been happening lately on some of the forums within the Gorean community, and that's the idea that if you are a submissive or a switch and you join a Gorean group, that somehow magically, miraculously, you become a kajira and a slave. Absolute nonsense. This is being promoted by a small subset within the Gorean community called Silk&Steel. And it's just absolute idiotic mentality is that they actually believe that by if you click on join their group, then you are not a slave, but you are a submissive or you are a switch, is that you become a slave. Now the backstory to this happened, a while ago, is that a submissive ended up joining the group, and she ended up saying some things that really upset some of the men. And so, they're telling her, you can't be like that. You need to behave like a slave. You are a slave, da 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 da. She gently reminded them, is like, no, I'm a submissive. I'm not a slave. And they took the stand and actually believed is that no, you are not a submissive. By joining this group, you automatically become a slave. You become a kajira. Now, think about that for a minute. Is that they have basically made a mockery of what Gore is. You cannot become a Kajira. You cannot become a master. You cannot become Gorean simply by clicking on join a Gorean group. It's just completely wrong. 100% wrong. 100% false teaching. To add to that, they end up trying backing up their claim is with about Elinor from the books. Now, Elinor, her story is basically found in Captive of Gore, which is the seventh book. And if you end up reading that book, it's very long, it's very laborious as far as all her struggles and all that things, but it's an important example of the difference between fiction and reality. Now, in the story of Elinor in Captive of Gore, is that she ends up waking up one morning, she ends up having a granddaughter. Doesn't know how she got it, and she goes unconscious, wakes up a little bit later, and there's a collar on her. Again, doesn't have a clue how the collar got there, goes unconscious, wakes up again, and a little bit later, and she tries escaping. And because there's people knocking on her door saying that they're the police, and they weren't, they were agents of the Priest Kings, but they were going to kidnap her and abduct her. She thought she could get away, she couldn't. And then thing she realizes is that she's been kidnapped, she's been abducted, and she's being transported to Gore. Now, when she gets to Gore, is that what ends up happening is that she ends up being in a slave camp, and she's being trained by a slave trainer, Targle. It's his camp, and she's being trained about how to be a slave and how to be appealing and how to be a pleasure slave and how to please men, da 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 da. Now, reality. Okay, you have people that join a Gorean group. They're not abducted, they're not being kidnapped, they're not being threatened with being whips and everything else. They are submissives. They click on a discussion group. That does not make them Gorean. That does not make them a Kajira. By clicking on a group, there is no magical power that transforms you from being something that you are into something that you are not. But this is the thinking of Silk&Steel. And using the example of Elinor, she was kidnapped, abducted, and forced to be a slave. Is that she's trying to use the parallel of a submissive joining a group, and that's exactly the same thing. Again, we're talking fiction and reality. Do not believe ever that by clicking on a group that you suddenly, magically, miraculously, incredibly, you know, that you become something that you are not. If you are a submissive, you remain as a submissive. If you are a dom, you remain as a dom. If you are a switch, You remain as a switch. You do not become a kajira by clicking on join group. You do not become a master by clicking join on group. This is complete false teaching. This is one of several reasons why groups like Silk and Steel never should have been resurrected. This kind of teaching is fallacy, it's idiotic, and it is simply wrong. Thank you.